Hi everyone, my name is John and I'm a very blessed level 3 Qhht practitioner and professional hypnotherapist. Very lucky to help people with all sorts of things, from stopping vaping to healing their anxiety right through to full-on Qhht sessions, which take about 4 or 5 hours, but they're so interesting. And today I had a really cool one. And we never know what's going to happen with Qhht. So as a practitioner, we have to be really prepared for anything, expect the unexpected. And in today's session, the lady came in to kind of find her happiness. She felt very different from everybody else, felt very different from her family. And she came in basically to know why and to understand why she felt so different. Now, I know a lot of people come in for that because it's quite common, but for her particular instance, she went back under hypnosis to a past life, and it was a very nice past life. It was a very, it was like a kind of like a jungle life, and it was a real sense of community, and everybody had their role. It wasn't a very long life. She died as a teenager. But it was more of a sense of community. But as a practitioner, I'm kind of looking for important things or just snippets of words that they say. So after that life ended, she came out of the body, she floated out of the body there, and we got the lesson for that life and the purpose of that life. But she said, they're showing me this. And she kept on saying that, they're showing me this for a reason. So I picked up on that, and because I'm so curious, I said, what do you mean they? And she said, I feel like there's beings beside me. And so I'm such a curious creature, that's our job, is to be curious, just like Dolores Cannon. So I dug and got more information about the two, and she said, one's very wise, but they're very black and white, like don't kind of mess around kind of energy. And she goes, I get a feeling like the other one is quite young, and she was the third one there. So then I was really curious, and I kept on talking, and then because I want to find out about them, so I asked about the older one. And sometimes those beings aren't very talkative because they're so black and white, and they're pretty much in their box. But I try and dig as much information as I can, and I always like asking the question if they've ever had an Earth experience before. And overwhelmingly, the majority of them says no, they haven't. So I'm always curious, and I always ask, well, why not? But this one felt like they didn't have to go to the Earth School at all. It was almost like it was a little bit beneath them, like they'll be going backwards. And I said, well, what are you doing here then? And it said that it got the call from help, and it's helping all the other galaxies out there, and it's doing the big picture stuff, but it got the call for help, and it came down, and it's doing this as part of its mission. So I said, well, what's this all got to do with the client? And he said, and it's so beautiful and it makes so much sense. He said, well, those two young ones, including the client and the other one, they're splinters of me. So I don't have to go down there as the whole, but I can do my piece as a splinter, and one is on this side of the world and the other's on the other side of the world. And they're here just to ignite their light and just to be here and just find it. But he didn't really have a reference point to what happy was, because the beings, they don't have the bandwidth of human beings. Human beings have a really huge emotional bandwidth, whereas some beings and some ETs are very narrow. Now, because the majority part of her was him, she was always looking for her happiness, but she couldn't find it. That's because he had no relation to what happiness was. And she was actually watching a screen of that other life, because this was his and the client's first incarnation here. So that life that we were exploring wasn't her life, it was an imprint. She was actually watching it from a screen to get a little bit of education of Earth and just how we're pack animals and we're community creatures and stuff like that. So the whole session made so much sense to her, and it was quite funny because when you're in the session, because I was talking to the bigger aspect of her, that's what Dolores would call the subconscious, or somebody would call a higher self. It's the bigger access, the bigger aspect of somebody that knows everything about that person, so they can answer from their perspective all the questions that that person has. Now, it wouldn't answer all of her questions because it would influence the future, or it'll ruin the surprise. So sometimes I relate to that is because human beings want to know what their future is because then they feel in control. But sometimes it's better not to know. Sometimes it's better just to keep walking the path and just see where the path leads to, which goes against what society tells you, that you have to have a 5-year plan and you have to do this, and everything's so structured, so rigid. Anything outside of that, it's freaking out, because the human brain freaks out because it doesn't feel like it's in control. And sometimes I relate it to like a little kid at Christmas. Sometimes if you tell the kid what they're getting for Christmas, well then on the day it's not as surprising and it's not as enjoyable as not telling the kid, and then they open up and they're like, wow, that's so cool, that's so cool. Life is like that sometimes, and that's why we don't get the answer sometimes, because it's going to influence it, or if they did answer it, it's going to take that person on a different road. So that was today's session, which was super fun for me, and it answered all of her questions, like the really deep knowing ones. But the most important thing out of a QHHT session is getting that connection with your higher self, or your angel, or an ET being, just a higher aspect of you. And it's opening the door to that, or your intuition. It's the same thing as your intuition, but it's keeping that connection really strong. So now she knows exactly what to do to keep that connection really, really strong. So if she has any questions about life or anything like that, she can just ask that being, and that being is always there. It's always in contact with her. So that's why I really love Dolores Cannon, because there's more to it than just having the session. It's the ripple effect after the session. It can be really, really life-changing. So if you're interested in having a QHHT session with somebody, you can go to qhhtofficial.com and find a practitioner near you, or follow the link below. Or if you want to get hold of me, I'll put my website details down below, because the sessions are so much fun and we never know what's going to happen. So thank you for watching, and I'd really appreciate it if you press like and subscribe. It just keeps me motivated to posting more session stories, and I'll be doing more session stories because I know that people are into it. So thank you for watching.